Hello, this is the Tradesight Brief Stock Market Preview for Wednesday, the 27th of November 2013. Charts as usual, brought to you by eSignal 11. This is going to be a very short preview because tomorrow is Wednesday, the day before Halloween. I'm sorry, the day before Thanksgiving. Let's take a look at the economic data. Let me walk you through what's coming out tomorrow. There's a lot, simply because Thursday the markets are closed, Friday they're essentially closed. It's a half day. Professional traders don't typically trade that day, although it is typically a gap up session. Just be aware of that. However, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, MBA Mortgage Index, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, initial and continuing jobless claims, that's a weekly number, durable goods. 9:45, so 15 minutes into the market, Chicago PMI expected at 58, that's a big number. 10 minutes or so later, depending on when the kids get up, the Michigan Revised Sentiment number, that's the final number for November, expected at 73. 30 minutes into the market at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, leading indicators, another decently important number, expected at negative 0.1%. And then 30 minutes after that, so at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, both crude oil inventories and natty gas inventories. Natty gas usually comes out on a Thursday, happens on a Wednesday this week. So it's a lot of data early, but here's the thing. It's also the busiest travel day of the year. People start to head out. So expect less people from the open, but even less people after that first hour and 90 minutes. There is a rush to the door on Wednesdays before Thanksgiving. So anything after that is very hazardous. You get out there and lose a lot of money in the second half of the day on Wednesday, you are not listening. You should not be trading heavily in that environment. And Friday, we will have no actual picks off of the report, no market preview such as this for the half day Friday. Markets are open from 9:30 a.m. Till 1 p.m. on Friday. That's Eastern Time, so it's basically a 3.5 hour day. The only reason we're open is that the U.S. rules state that the stock market can't be closed more than 3 days in a row, including weekends. Otherwise, we shouldn't even be open on that Friday. But briefly, here's a look at the ES futures, and I did want to show you something interesting. This is 5-minute bars, and you can see, so far we've had Monday and Tuesday of this week, the last 2 days here on the chart, which is basically most of this chart. So we had a little gap up on Monday, came back down and ultimately filled that, closed just barely negative from the open, but just above where the prior day's close had been. So essentially a flat session, and again, get used to that the week of Thanksgiving. If anything, there's a slight upward bias over the holidays. Then we come in today with a flat open, very flat session. Didn't do much early. There was a little spike on the news at the 30-minute mark, the consumer confidence number, but nothing really important happened from that. We reversed quickly and came right back up. So ignoring that one bar, we were basically in a 4 to 5 point range all day on the ES, and everybody knows that's not much in terms of action. What's interesting is that we did late in the session. Remember, there's 3 extra bars here in the futures than in stocks because they close 15 minutes after the stock market. So in the last 20 minutes or so, we sold off just enough to get us back to basically even for the session. Another flat day. Okay, well, that's not uncommon. And look, there was actually some heavy volume that made that happen. But here's what's interesting about it. Okay, let's go to some of the daily charts really quick here, and then I'll call it. Here's the S&P, I'm sorry, the SOX daily chart. And you can see the SOX, the semiconductors, had a positive day. Matter of fact, looks like a nice breakout, even though technically we're still operating under this 13 sell signal over here from the seeker perspective. We're still operating under that, and we have the pink risk line from that has not broken. Let's look at the biotechs briefly. Slightly positive day, small doji, didn't do much, but did close just slightly above the prior day's close. And then here's the NASDAQ 100, new high once again, closing positive. So where's that little sell-off I just showed you in the futures? That only manifested itself in the broad market, the S&P, that they pushed that back down. And here's what's so interesting about that dip is that we would have had, our seeker count would have given us a 13, which is our sell signal. When you get to a 13 in this phase, the red numbers, we would have had a 13 if we had simply closed up higher here, near where we were, a couple points higher right before that sell-off. So that sell-off late in the day prevented us from getting a 13 sell signal the day before Thanksgiving. Will we get it on Wednesday, at which point the Friday half day probably doesn't matter, and the rollover occurs on Monday? Will we get it on Friday? Will we get it Monday? Will we not get it at all? I don't know, but by all accounts, we should have had it today, and we didn't get it. I just think it's interesting that they pushed down the S&P and nothing else just to avoid getting that signal if you're a conspiracy buff. That's what it kind of looks like.